Cindi, what do you think are some of the main advantages then of Data Vault?
Well, for one thing, as I said, because Data Vault was built inside of Lockheed. So if we go back to look at the Data Vault story, where did it come from? So Dan was hired into Lockheed Martin in their astronomics division. He was young buck and new kid on the block, I will say, and he was hired into Lockheed. And of course, they did what happens to so many people coming in that are new and don't. It's like being voluntold. You know that feeling.
Yep.
Don't miss a meeting because you'll be voluntold, right? And so they handed him a project that was the worst night. Was like a tsunami, right? They handed him a project. It had very little sponsorship, very little funding, and they basically said, "We want you to build us a data warehouse. By the way, we have 250 source systems, and we want it in 6 months." How do you do that now? So Dan said, "Okay," right? He took it, and so they actually delivered 125 source systems in 6 months to Lockheed, operational with business value. But Dan had a very small team, and this is one of the reasons why Data Vault is also it's an interesting approach because instead of saying you need a team of 20 developers and everybody, he had a team of 3 people, including himself. He had 4 people with himself. He had a mainframe programmer that Lockheed had, it's kind of like, what is that movie where they have the guy in the office and they keep moving. He ends up in the basement and all he wants is his red stapler, right?
Office space.
There's one of these guys that the guy was brilliant. He was, he understood all of the systems inside of the astronomics division that were running through the mainframe. He understood the data, but he was never allowed to learn anything new. He was one of those critical employees that got stuck, which we see quite frequently. Their corporate knowledge is so strong that the business thinks they can't afford to let them do anything else, right?
Yeah.
And we see that frequently. And so he was grumpy. Nobody wanted to talk, people didn't want to deal with him. But Dan went to him and said, if I can let you do something new, would you help our team? And the guy was like, absolutely, I'm on board. He also had a extremely experienced, seasoned database modeler and DBA architect. And she taught him so much and was extremely, a huge contributor to the entire model when they started tearing things down and sort of looking into, how do we make this thing as flexible as possible? Because, oh, by the way, they had 2 government clients, if you will, that were part, as you can imagine, astronomics were launching rockets and things like that. So NASA was one of their clients, and there was another intel agency that was one of their clients as well. And so one of the challenges that the agency gave Dan was basically anything you build on the commercial side, you have to be able to throw over the wall to us without breaking what we're doing over here behind closed doors. And there were 3 challenges that they gave him, and that was the one challenge that no one had been able to successfully satisfy. And so he took that challenge back to his team, and this is where you get the flexibility in the model. Okay, it's optimized to take advantage of these things. And so out of that they worked through those processes and defined the techniques that worked best. And they did that over 10 years. So from 1990 to 2000, this was how Lockheed in astronomics approached data warehousing, how they satisfied their government contractors. And oh, by the way, they were 100% auditable, which is key. If we talk about trustworthiness of data and the criticality of that, because as well as I do, if your if your consumers don't trust your product, they're going to work around you, which is where we get a lot of these silos and people going off and building their own thing, and then none of the numbers match. I mean, we've all seen this. And the only way to stop something like that is to actually build, I would say build organically based on business concepts, right, that can be auditable back to the source systems. And so that is how Dan's team built. That's all of those methods and techniques. All of that is inside of Data Vault. And when he came out of Lockheed in 2000, Lockheed gave him permission to take that methodology out and then begin to teach it and sell it. It was something that his team had built. The other thing that Lockheed did that people don't know about necessarily is that they actually developed 30,000 test cases on Data Vault in that 10-year period, testing the process, the approaches, the quality, how to build rigor in so that you can test to make sure that your model is correct. Are you 100% auditable? Can you absorb changes without impact and refactoring? 30,000 test cases. And so the test cases he was not allowed to take out, but he was able to take the methodology, the architecture, and the techniques. And that is where Data Vault came from. That's what it was born in.